Welcome to the Mindful CIO podcast, where we explore the human side of tech leadership and what it takes to mindfully and sustainably lead high-performing tech teams. Welcome back to the Mindful CIO podcast, where we explore the human side of tech leadership. And today we have Simon Reiter. Simon is the CTO at Care Super. His prior role was serving as the Chief Technology Officer at Seabus Property, following a series of crucial roles at Aware Super, including Head of IT Delivery, Acting Chief Technology Officer, and Head of Technology Strategy. With over 23 years of experience in the ICT industry across financial service, education, healthcare, legal, and government sectors, Simon is a recognized top 50 Chief Information Officer and Digital Transformation Executive in Australia, specializing in driving enterprise-wide transformation initiatives and successful mergers and acquisitions. Simon has managed large-scale and diverse teams, leading the adoption of cutting-edge technologies. Last but not least, Simon has been an executive mentor for the Tech LX program and the Women in STEM, promoting diversity and inclusion within the technology sector. So thanks so much, Simon, for making the time to have this conversation today.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks for having me along. It's great to come along and have a conversation about all things human in the technology leadership type of world. So looking forward to it.
Wonderful. It took us a while, right? We've been talking since March this year, trying to allocate the time. That was good for both of us. So here we are. Yes.
All good things come to those who wait. So it's
that's right.
Got there eventually.
Very good. So let's get started, Simon. We met in person. I was very surprised on how tall you are. That was one of my first comments when we met for Coffee in Feb. There's a lot of information about you. You've done a number of podcasts, which is great. So I think people can get to know, a lot about Simon Reiter online. But is there anything that you haven't revealed just yet, about Simon that you're willing to comfortable to share here, something personal about you or maybe about your career that hasn't been, mentioned before?
Look, there's always something to share. I think, the thing with leadership is that you're constantly learning new things anyway, and you're constantly finding new weaknesses or new strengths that you didn't know you had, right? To go through different experiences. For me, it was actually interesting. This week I spoke at the ASFA conference, which is a big superannuation conference, on a panel talking about technology transformation, which is a topic I'm very comfortable with. But I was actually quite nervous about that podcast, that presentation in stage. Don't know why. I feel like it was just because I was in front of a whole bunch of 1,000 other superannuation peers who all know about transformation, who all know about superannuation, and you kind of just look at that and go, am I qualified to be on the stage to have this conversation and share this with people? So you kind of get to think about that, and then you kind of just reassure yourself that you're okay, you are there, you've got the experience, it's okay. But I think no matter how many times you go through things, and no matter how many times I've shared bits of information, I still sometimes get a bit nervous doing presentations and public speaking. So wouldn't think so with the amount of ones I've done over the years, but it's something to share with everyone that it sometimes happens. I think it's perfectly part of being a human person.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing, Simon. So true, isn't it? I heard this similar comments before, that sometimes the topic you can be very familiar with, but if it's a new audience, it could really, bring some anxiety. So, and sometimes the best thing to do is to, mention that, and sometimes that helps actually, sometimes not.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. That was a But once you're on the stage, it's fine. I always find it's just before you go on that big stage, the bright lights, that you kind of get a bit in your head, I think. Once you're up there, it's okay. Well, for me at least, for this week, it was okay once I was up there. So, it's good to highlight that, Nally.
Good stuff. And I noticed, you're quite active on LinkedIn. You often post. I was actually refreshing my memory about your latest articles, and we'll go there later in the conversation. But I liked your comment on, I think, your last post on LinkedIn around the importance to invest in change management early, in the
Yep.
piece, and keeping the why as your north star. But let's keep that for later. So
No.
in terms of the Mindful CIO manifesto, as you know, the Mindful CIO podcast, the manifesto is a bit of a north star for us here, and we have
Yep.
published the 1.0, the 2.0. Is there any particular principle or declaration that resonates with you at all?
Yeah, I think for me, when I read both, I mean, version two, I probably align a bit more with version two, if I'm honest. I think it's sometimes less is more. It's the same principles, right? It's just articulated in a more probably a bit more concise manner.
Mm,
And for me, I find that a bit more easier to digest and remember. The thing that jumps out for me is the human culture pieces that jumped out from the manifesto. I think if your culture is not right, doesn't matter how great your strategy is, doesn't matter how good your vision is, how great your change program is going to be. But if your company culture and your people and your team culture isn't quite where it needs to be, for you then to think you're going to drive a big transformation journey and do a whole bunch of change, it's a really tough achievement to do that. So I think the first piece is really, that's why it jumped out for me, thinking the first thing you always want to do is get your culture right, your ways of working right, get the understand that the staff know they're supported to take risks, know when they can drive and transform, and when they have to escalate when they don't. So you have building those foundations out. So for me, that jumped out a lot in the culture piece, as it is really relevant to. And on the flip side, even if you're not doing transformation, say, look, I don't do transformation. I'm just I keep everything running. That's my job, right? I think it's still just as relevant for that with culture, because if your culture's not right, will your staff want to come in on a Sunday at 2 in the afternoon because something's broken to help out on the Monday? I mean, absolutely, you can offer to pay people, and you should, by the way, if it's weekends. But the big difference is when you call them on a Sunday, do they pick up the phone or not? Regardless, and that's the dictation of good culture or not. So they can come in and help out to solve things when there's a problem. So, because sometimes you might offer to pay people, but if the culture's not there, they don't want to come in and help out, right? But you build that culture of we're in it together. I often find with the culture piece, it's always best driven by sort of like a hamburger. I think culture's a bit like a hamburger, right? You sort of squeeze it from the top, and you squeeze it from the bottom. So your leadership at the top pushes down a bit, and you empower all your staff across your whole team to own the culture themselves, and they push it up a little bit, and you kind of just get the whole culture burger going, and then you kind of that
oh,
just brings it all together.
that's brand new, Simon. I haven't heard the metaphor of the Hamburg culture before.
No, it's
That's
new, but it's
interesting.
a
Mm.
when you think about it's relevant though, because you have to squeeze from both sides to get the right culture coming through your organization. You can't just drive it from the top. You can't expect it to come up from the bottom, or in between, right? You need to be actually hit it from all angles. So
Good stuff. For those who are listening and not familiar with the principles of Manifesto 2.0, so healthy culture, the one that Simon just mentioned, we have also diversity, humanity, and sustainability, human skills over technical prowess, and focus and presence with people and tasks. So based on your bio, Simon, that I read before, I think, clearly diversity, you are a champion of, women in STEM
yeah,
and, mentoring in that space. So I'm assuming that's an area that you can relate to as well.
yeah, absolutely. I was probably looking at it from the top one. I would pick all of those, and it's culture,
Mm,
diversity would be a close second. I think if you look at any team, the more diverse your team, the more diverse your leadership team. And that includes, when I say diversity, it's educational diversity, it's geographical diversity, it's gender diversity, it's cultural belief diversity. All those things come into play, because what they do when you have a problem, you have a whole bunch of unique perspectives looking at it to solve it. If you hire everyone who comes from the same school, same cultural background, same demographic, same gender, generally speaking, you will have the same solution to the problem because that's your lived experiences is very similar.
mm,
So the more you can bring different people along who have different lived experiences, they'll bring a different lens to the problem. And I much prefer um, when there's a problem to have a whole bunch of diverse thought in the room. That generally means we'll find the solution a lot quicker. And then that's
mm.
really what you want to do, right? So that's why I think diversity is a real a real power play of how you actually drive large scale high performing team culture is by injecting that diversity across it as well. So they kind of go hand in hand. That's
Mm.
definitely a close second.
Yes. And I think it's the last few years it's because in the past I think we would talk about and we still talk. I was running a workshop yesterday for 20 leaders in tech.
Mm.
And we had two ladies in the room, right? And I was like, things haven't changed much since I left, 10 years ago, being the only woman in the data analytics team back then. So in terms of the gender diversity, I think we're doing still a lot of work, but it's good that we're talking
Yeah,
about beyond gender. So we're talking about neurodiversity and cultural, ethnic, age. There are so many layers and thinking styles and yes.
yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. And
Mm,
yeah, neurodiverse is a really great diversity point to touch on. So there's a lot of
mm,
really if you look at technology roles, there's already really fantastic technology roles which are really well tuned to those on who are neurodiverse. You start looking at like in data science, data analytics. You're looking at cybersecurity, cybersecurity and analytics, um, development, software development. They're all really well tuned to that the way your brain wants to think around how it analyzes problems and solves them. It's really
mm,
tied in really well to those who have a neurodiverse background as well. So I actually think the more diverse you can make your team, like you said, there's an IT job for everyone. And IT is so diverse. It's not just, unfortunately, I think it's sort of it's a bit of a stigma from some of the pop culture, like IT crowd show. The
mm,
people look at that and go, oh, that's what IT is. That's not really for me, right? But when you get into it and actually understand what technology actually is, I mean, ultimately, where else in the organization can you drive organizational change across the whole company and improve the way the whole organization works more efficiently, more effectively, deliver better outcomes for your customers or your communities that you work in? Technology drives all those things. So I think you look at that and go, you actually have a great opportunity and a great responsibility, of course, to when you're working technology, to have that impact, which I think is a great career to go down.
mm. So true. Yes, you touched on well, you didn't use the word adoption, but as I was listening to you, I was thinking on about adoption, right? Because I've been certainly been part of a couple of programs in my early days back in Brazil and in
Mm.
Australia when you see multi-million-dollar projects and not the ideal investment in change, and then you have issues with adoption, which is it can be a very
Oh,
expensive exercise. Yeah.
absolutely. I think with any change program, you need to. The thing I see where it always fails is that change is always looked at as an art. They try to bolt it on afterwards, right? So the project goes off and does all their discovery, design, build, off they go, and then they
Mm,
launch a big change program at the very end. I think that never works
mm,
well. You need to really put change in from day one. When you really get them involved, bring the project to life, they can really help with the why. I think that's the key bit, right? The other end's around they can actually bring the project to life. Like there's humans working in that project. Well, no, well let's understand what those humans are doing, right? It's not just this project behind this
mm,
black box. It's something that builds things. Let's understand the individuals who are working in there, what they're passionate about. We have a great change team at Care Super where they get involved in every project at the start, and they do things like fortnightly newsletters that go out to the whole company on the four big transformation program, or the transformation program we are running with 4 projects. They have newsletters that go out to staff. People can read all about what's happened in the last couple of weeks, looking at what's planned to come up ahead. We highlight when there might be impacts for people to be aware of so they can plan around it. We do interviews with people inside the project team to explore what they're passionate about the project, what excites them about the project. Um, those types of things build that momentum and bring it to life to everyone. And I think most people in an organization, when they understand the why and the who's doing the project, the why we're doing the project, and then the how we're doing it, I think it brings the whole thing to life and everyone's on board because ultimately, when humans and people, who we all are ultimately, right, understand the why we're doing something different and why we're changing, we're generally very receptive to it. The reason we're always generally anti-change is because we don't understand the why. And going back to our
mm.
fight or flight mechanisms from many, many years ago, we just go, well, I don't understand that. That sounds risky. I'll just stay where I am because I know it's safe, right? So it's kind of how you bring everyone on the journey to explain this is the benefit of why we're doing this. it's going to make your life easier because of this. And it's not like, oh, we're making a system run a bit faster. You can't be technical in the change program. You
Mm,
really has to be normal business language that you'll talk to
yeah.
people about.
And the why, I think, I mean, the why, it can be quite tricky to translate the why to the many different levels, right? Because as you said, I love the idea of the interview. So I've done
Yeah,
MailChimp newsletters, when I launched a people and culture dashboard, more
yeah,
than 10 years ago at AGL Energy. And if Marcus Gibson, if you're watching this or listening, you remember that was his suggestion, my leader back then. So the newsletter, I think, is a great idea. It's cool to hear that your change team is doing the same as well at Care Super. But the interviews, I haven't really considered that. And I think that's such a good strategy, right? Because you kind of elevate, change champions and change agents,
yeah,
and also you translate what's in it for them, for each person, which can be
yeah. That's
inspiring
it.
for others as well.
That's it. I think you bring it to life, right? It's not that we're replacing this platform because it's giving us 20% more efficiency. That doesn't
Mm,
resonate with anyone really, right? Like
mm,
it's more well, we're going to remove these 5 pain points you guys raised to us, weeks ago. And we're, oh great, that finally gets fixed. That's what people think.
mm,
Like every day in my life I come to work, I do these 6 things. This new system will get rid of those 2 things I don't like doing. That's even better, right? So that's the type
mm,
of narrative you have to go down, the make it real, make the change real, and make that really tangible, that they can understand exactly what you're changing, and the why. So
mm-hmm. Cool. So, in terms of self-care, Simon, we are Mindful Sale podcast. I think gives a bit of a hint. We are into,
yeah,
mindfulness, mindful leadership, self-care, not burning, preventing burnout, recovering from burnout. So you travel quite a bit. So as I said before, we've been trying to connect since March. You are, on a big, big, very complex role, leading merges and transformations, and over the years since you moved from Adelaide to Melbourne.
mm,
Those listening, check the other podcasts with Simon. Lots of podcasts out there. So he's originally
yeah.
from South Australia. So what do you do, if on a regular basis or not so regular basis? How do you keep yourself, well, mentally, emotionally, physically? Is there any no routines
They
or rituals that you have?
So it's always a challenge, right? I think it's a challenge because when we are always comfortable in our own routines. We all have our own routine, whatever it is. I don't know what we all different, right? We all have a thing that we do. We wake up in the morning. When I'm at home, the first thing I do is walk downstairs, turn the coffee machine on, make a cup of coffee. Other people do different things, right? So, but when you travel, I find that routine changes
Mm,
because you all of a sudden, you can't go make a coffee because you have to wait till the breakfast opens at 6:30, and then because I wake up generally earlier than that, it's kind of sometimes it's like, oh, it's like you have to figure out what your routine is when you travel. So I build different routines from different things. So I try to have some anchors though when in those different routines. So for me, it's sort of three buckets of things I try to find for. There's the work, there's the family, and then there's the Simon side of the buckets I try to maintain. Work, what I do with that is that when I travel, I containerize it, right? So I go, okay, I'm going to start working at, usually it's about 8 a.m. when I travel, and I will stop at 6:30 p.m. So usually it might be a time like that. And then what I do is I'll then do some video calls back home, talk to the kids, talk to my wife, do some time. Then I'll go get myself some dinner, and then that becomes Simon's time. So you find how you de-risk, do you sort of de-stress from the day. The number one thing I do not do is work in my hotel room. You're tempted to because you're traveling, you got stuff to do. But when you mix that work mindset into your rest mindset, your brain, I find for me, I don't sleep as well. So if I work in my hotel
mm,
room, I will toss and turn all night. If I work outside in the main business center of the hotel or the bar or in the restaurant when I'm having dinner, sometimes I do emails yeah, that's fine. I will then sleep pretty good in the hotel. But it took me a
mm,
few years to figure that one out. So that's a good tip to focus on. I also make sure that I do exercise at least go to the gym 3 times a week. It is hard. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it's, just get up early and go. It's definitely not that easy. And some weeks I don't do 3 times a week, right? I sometimes do less because work schedules and travel. It's just family. It's the way it is. But I think I find that's a good stress reliever. When you build up a lot of stress, it's always to do cortisol levels, and the exercise is a great way to get to lower those naturally. And I find I always feel a little bit less stressed after I exercise, and a little bit more motivated and positive. So I try to do that as well. Good thing about traveling is you have a gym in the hotel. So it's right there, right? So have along. Um, and I often find when I travel, I do it in the morning first thing before I start my day because it's one of those things where it's out of the way. I can go off and focus
Mm.
on what I need to do for the rest of the day. That took me a while to figure that one out as well. Um, I also find that when I make time for myself, so when I'm at home, there's other things I can do for my hobbies. Like I've got my guitars that I play. I can't take a guitar when I travel. It's not realistically possible, right? So that doesn't happen. But what I do when I travel is I take a physical book with me. So I alternate my book reading between a work type of book or then
Mm.
a fictional like leisure type of book. So I sort of go between the two. Usually alternate. I find by just reading a physical book away from screens, for me, is a good way to disconnect as well. And I generally find reading before bed is a good way to reset myself and sort of reset my energy as well. So um, in one of my other podcasts I talk about my energy buckets. Now I try to keep them full because some things drain my bucket, my energy bucket. Some things fill my energy bucket.
Mm.
Like having a nice meal, right? Fuels my energy bucket because that's like, oh, that was delicious. You feel so much better afterwards. Spending time with your family, it fills your energy bucket. So you look at what fuels those and then other things drain them, right? So like getting up at 4 a.m. for an early flight, we're draining for your bucket. So you gotta find different things. And that's these different energy sources, like physical energy. You've also got like mental energy. You've also got emotional energy. So it's how you actually keep those buckets full. And it's just finding different levers that you can pull. Um, but it's taking a few years to figure that out with traveling off and on. And then you got to try. You sort of try. It's a trial and error. Just get trying different things. That didn't work. This worked. This didn't work. That worked. Keep a bit of a journal, and that sort of kept. I could go back and reflect on the data a bit. Being of a obviously an analytical minded type of person working in technology, and that kind of helped me to anchor on what kind of was working, and focus back on how I could use those. So
Wow, amazing. Continuous improvement in action there with the reflection, the fine tuning, right, of your strategies. I'm very impressed, Simon, and I love the how solid those strategies sound. Simple but solid, and effective, I suppose, from what I'm hearing. And
mm,
it's interesting that the your tactics or strategies. It reminds me of according to research, the most resilient people, they do have strategies around 4 categories: physical, mental, environmental, and social. And you
yep,
pretty much know your 3 buckets, addressing that plus exercise. And I love the reflection, the fact that you mentioned journaling. Yes,
yeah.
that's
I mean,
pretty
I don't
cool.
have it's in my phone in the notes app, right? Because it's there
Hmm.
always with me. I find that's the easiest way to do it. Um, but I think you definitely have to go because it's hard. I find for me, I can't remember what happened 8 weeks ago on those at that level of what did I sleep better that night? Did that work better? So it's just being able to go back and reflect on it kind of helps. Just helps a little bit. Um, and it's just as simple as how do I feel the next day after trying something new. On a scale of 1 to 5, I generally just do something like that, and you kind of this kind of helps to anchor on it.
That's awesome. And I love that you have a salmon bucket as well, having some quality me time. And you mentioned How We Feel. There is a really cool app, you might want to check it out, called How We Feel.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's interesting, yeah, it's really, I recommend to, I used to teach at Monash,
Yeah.
my master's students, emotional intelligence. So I used to recommend that one. It's from,
Okay.
it's created by Yale University. Yes, interesting one. Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing. I'm sure it'll be inspiring for many listeners. Let's shift gears. And you spoke about leadership style. I mean, not so much. I'm starting to mix up previous
All
podcasts
right.
I listened from you today. But in terms of leadership styles, some of us, we do have role models. People that we worked with, or people that maybe public figures, people that have actually inspired us along the way. So, do you have someone that was an inspiration, someone that you looked up in terms of, leadership style, any particular traits that contributed to who you are today as a people leader?
Yeah, I think over the years, uh, it's probably about three people I can kind of think of over the years where they've all had that inspirational leadership or that ability to coach and improve my capabilities as an individual, and or make me reflect on how I can be a better leader. And all that at the right time in your career when you needed it. So, the first one early on in my career, I had the IT manager at the school that I was going to as a student. This is going back a while, right? So I was much younger. But the he taught he I was interested in it, but he actually took the time out of his day job to teach me what he knew.
Mm.
Um, and that really got me into the technology career in the first place. So before that, I was looking at other careers like boys do. I was looking at I like train driving, I like trucks. Like I want to be a pilot, but obviously too tall for that one. So looked through different things, and eventually you ended up. But I like tinkering and solving problems. Always did. Um, so then I got into IT that way, and he kind of taught me a lot of things, and really took me under his wing to coach me and teach me how to be a technologist, right? So, and that's always always thankful to him for the start he gave me in my career to get to where I am. Got along a bit more. I had another manager when I was kind of going from that senior manager to sort of head up executive top of the levels. Really coaching more on the way, all back, it's mostly about communication, right? So, going up the ranks, you get promoted very quickly in technology if you're technically quite strong. But what they don't do when you're technically strong is they don't necessarily, well, this is all roles really, is they don't really spend the time teaching around people leadership, coaching, styles, communication, leading with empathy, those types of things that you kind of, I was probably the strongest at back then. And that kind of took the time for that person to sort of coach and teach and inspire. But again, the two things they both have in common was they could see the potential in somebody and they decided to take the time out of what was busy for them to invest in the time to give back to someone else, which I kind of then take that onto my investment into doing the mentoring programs I do, because I kind of feel like that's my way of thanking them for their support in my career and seeing where they got me, but also my ability to me also to be able to provide the same gift they gave to me to give that gift back to other individuals in their career. So that's why I find it the most rewarding. If I was going to say current, like if I was going to say most inspirational leader of all time, it's if I look at generally globally, I think the Queen of England comes to mind. Uh, why? Well, I'll tell you what. So she helped, she ran that role. She's thrown into the role because it wasn't by design. Because I think it's turns out she stuck to it the whole way through. Always led in a way that was always within no scandals, no poor communication, great speaking, very well liked by everybody, but well respected at the same time. So it was kind of, you look at that, doesn't matter if you're a pro monarchy or not, right? This is just more about the individual. Her dedication, I think, to the responsibility of that role, right through to when she was physically couldn't do it anymore. I think she's the upstanding example of what a great leader is around. You're there as a rock. You're there. You can communicate. You lead with empathy. You're great. You're providing support to everybody, but you're also seen as the go-to lights that I can go to for direction, coaching, inspiration. Um, yeah, so that's the general. That's why I can't let that one. I know it's a bit of an unusual answer, but I can't let that one because I think it's the most consistent one I can think of for all the leaders across the world.
That's great. Thank you. I love the answer because it give you, personal touch with mentors that actually had a major impact, influence in your career and the direction of your career and where you are today in a public figure that, I mean, we can't deny, in terms of just looking at the tenure of the role, right? And the
Yeah,
consistency and commitment, there is merit to just in that alone. Yes.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
very much so.
Yes. Um, and in terms of your leadership style, um, Simon, I heard you saying before that You moved from being the, like many, architects and people in early days in their careers, feeling like the smartest guy in the room, to being more facilitator, with your leadership team. And you
Yep.
know I don't know if, trying to be the last one to speak so you don't influence so much, the perspectives and that kind of thing. So um, what else could you share around how your leadership style evolved, and where you are at today? And we spoke when we met earlier this year around 360s. How
Yeah.
360 sometimes it can be useful, but sometimes not so much, depending on how authentic people are when they are providing feedback to you.
Yeah.
Which I would argue that sometimes can, what I've seen with clients in my personal coaching clients in the past, sometimes it is to do with psychological safety, peers, direct reports, leaders, etc. But
Yep.
yeah, on that theme of leadership style evolution, what are your initial thoughts? What comes to mind?
I think you're right. There's different tools you can leverage. I think 360 is one of them. I find mostly it's about at an executive level. It's mostly about communication and listening, like listening more than you spend talking. I spend what I actually do in my current role was we do skip meetings where I catch up with random people with 2 or 3 levels with managers in between. I do hold CTO Connect sessions. So when I go to different offices when I travel, I host a morning tea. We bring in like eight or so technology staff from across the technology department in that geographical area. We have a chat, hear what's going on, here's what's going well, hear from them if there's any feedback they want to give as well. Like lots of, I generally ask very open, I only ask 2 questions, and generally that they do most of the talking. So we're going to say, how are things going with them? What they're working on, essentially, is there anything they could, if they were me, what they change to improve the way we deliver services? So they're quite well received. We also launched a internal podcast with technology as well, which is every couple of weeks we launch one of those, which is good. So that's 2 things. I give an update on that one around all things tech across the team. But we also sometimes have guest speakers on there as well to share some and collaborate across. We find that as well received with technology teams. But ultimately, all those things, plus you do your formal 360s, formal performance reviews. But on top of that, it's really around having clear work plans, I generally find. So if you can spend the time putting in the right structure around how you prioritize work that comes into technology, you generally provide a lot of clarity to all your staff. A lot of technology workers generally want to know, why am I doing this? What's the reason for doing this? I used to get frustrated when I was a system administrator. Because I get told by some manager somewhere we have to do this thing. I'm like, well, that's crazy, right? Why would you do it that way? Why would you be doing this instead, right? So, but it's because sometimes you don't understand the broader picture of why. So in hindsight, look back at that and go, well, I probably didn't understand the broader picture of why. But sometimes I probably was also right. So it's having the right, but there was no angle or avenue for me to bring that feedback up in a structured way. So I think that's why you kind of hear it from a couple of angles. We do lots of planning. We sort of do big retro and forward planning every H1 and H2 across technology. So we also reflect on what worked well, what didn't work well in the last 6 months, and we sort of plan it the next 6 months. And we move things around if we can to sort of balance out the workload. Some things obviously can't move, but we do what we can. And then we also, below that, with our IT leaders below my leadership team and me, we actually do quarterly planning days. We spend half the day talking about prioritization, effort, and what we're focusing on for that quarter, and the other half we spend talking a lot about culture and ways of working. So we sort of do provide that too. But yeah, generally, it's more, I think, listening more and creating the opportunities to listen to staff. The real downside of having a C in your title is that people will just agree with you in the room, and I think you need to realize that unfortunately is the case. And you just need to spend the time to create this social and psychological safety that they have this forum so they can publicly ask that. Which actually reminds me, one other thing we put in place was a anonymous ask the CTO button. So I get that on the internet.
Ah,
People submit that. I don't know.
I
I don't
love
know
that.
who. It doesn't say who it was. I have no idea, which is exactly what you want it to be. And they can ask me anything, and then I address those in my podcast every
Oh,
couple of weeks. So
oh, that's
um,
awesome.
So we've had, we get a couple of questions. The last one we did, I got asked about what do I see as the vision of AI for the fund and how we're going to use it in technology.
Mm,
And another one was around I've got too much email. What's your strategy for dealing with email across technologies? Questions like that. It
mm,
depends. We had one in there that was raised once saying there's a question around our hiring practices and how come we keep hiring people from the same spot. See, that's a perception. We don't, but it was a perception thing. Well, I could address that in the podcast to the team and say, well, this is actually how our recruitment process and how it works.
hmm.
This just happens to be where these people were applied from. It was an open process. They were the best person for the job. That's why they got it right. So those things do help, I think, around providing the opportunities to listen.
Wow, that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing, Simon. I'm sure again that will be very inspiring for other CTOs, CIOs listening. The approach that you're taking on the cadence, the governance, the creative ways to communicate. I love the idea of the podcast, the ask the CTO anonymous, feature there. These are really, really cool ways to keep in touch and keep, listening,
Yeah,
to help to demystify your role and help people to see you as a human as well, and someone
yeah.
that they can ask a question and it's open to have a conversation with the what's the name of the event that you run when you are off
Oh,
away from Melbourne?
CTO connects. CTO
CTO
connects.
Connect. Yeah, love that idea as well. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So you mentioned vision. That one of the questions was around vision for AI, and um, if I can combine a little bit of two questions. So what would you say that no, it's one of the most pressing issues you have, or no issues, challenges, I should say, most pressing challenges you have that you're navigating right now, and in relation to AI, because I believe there will be some element, shape, or form of AI element in there, but that could be a wrong assumption for me. Um, in relation to your article, I know that you kind of addressed that question in your article already. Who should own AI, around the AI ownership, and
Yep.
also not so much the ownership, but do you believe that CIOs and CTOs they play a significant role in ensuring that AI, if and how AI could be implemented in a responsible, ethical manner? So there are three questions in there, Simon. Number
All right.
one,
Good.
most pressing issues. Number
Fun.
two, how do you see ownership of AI, and how can we implement AI in a
Yeah.
responsible, ethical manner?
It's a good one. Look, I think the most pressing issue, I think, for most organizations or CTOs, CIOs, it's around the pace of change. I think the pace of change we're seeing
Mm,
now, it's so much faster than it used to be. Like some of the technologies, like I'll pick on AI because we're gonna get there in a minute. But AI,
mhm,
for example, some of the AI engines that came out in January this year are defunct. They're gone. They're no longer relevant. And I think there's no other time in technology that I've ever seen where we've had technology that within a year it's gone. I used to write 5-year tech strategies. Now I'm writing 3-year tech strategies. I mean, I probably in a couple, I probably writing 1-year technology strategies, right? The speed they're changing, and I think that's the real challenge. Because as
mm,
technologists, you go, how do you keep across all those changes and at the same time make sure your strategy is it can adapt and
mm,
support that and pivot as those new changes come through. I guarantee not, 3 years ago, no one's strategy had AI in it, right? At all. If you're halfway through your strategy and AI came along, what do you have to do? We have to stop, you have to pivot,
mm,
and you have to inject it into your strategy somehow. And that's the challenge. I think it's the speed of the
mm,
change. Um, and I don't think that's going to change. I think with quantum computing coming on the horizon in 2030s, 2040s, that's going to make it even faster. Also, I'm going to have a bit faster pace to change. I think it's kind of one of those things around we have to readopt and look at the ways we work to sort of understand have we built our own constraints. A lot of times I think people go, "Oh, we're constrained. Our process is too slow." We built that process, right? Humans, us, we built that process. We implemented those guardrails. We can change them. Like, there's nothing saying you have to follow that process. So if you think if your company says we have to do a 3-year strategy, I mean, you have the conversation and go, well, let's just do a 1-year strategy, and we'll come back and do maybe a high vision, maybe a North Star vision statement for 3 years, and we'll work our way towards, or something like that, right? You don't. You don't need to have as things change, you need to be evolving and demonstrating the why, right? I think looking off that, that's what AI is the helper and also the disruptor at the same time. AI will help us work a lot faster. You can use AI tools. We all know a lot of stats out there that AI at the moment for personal efficiency is what 20 to 30% gains for individuals. That's great. If you think about that, that's an extra day a week that you kind of get in your day. It's a great way to leverage it for efficiency. The con is at the same time is that everyone else is using it, therefore the speed of everything else is sped up to counteract with it, right?
Expectations as well. Yeah.
That's it. Expectations. I mean, it's made everyone to a great writer, right? Everyone before which is great. I think it's great for equality. If you come from a non-English speaking background and you're working in an English speaking company, all of a sudden now your ability to communicate with everyone else is much stronger, right? Which I think is a fantastic equalizer. At the same time, you have everyone else is writing the same. Doesn't matter what you're writing, because we're all writing the same tools and leveraging it. And sometimes that can cause a bit of a lack of creative objectivity as well with AI. And then that goes back to the ethics point. When do you use it? And I think a lot of companies need to look at, do you have an AI ethics policy? You probably want to start looking at those. There is some really good guidance on some of these things. I think KPMG and EY, for example, just two, I'm sure a few other ones have as well, have released like AI adoption papers, which are free on the internet. You can go get. They outline around, the acceptable use of AI principles, AI ethics considerations to think about. So they do have those there. They're free resources you can go look at and use. I absolutely think you want strong governance across AI very early on. We have a data governance and AI committee at Care Super that owns and governs data and AI. I put those together on purpose because I feel like strategically, AI needs data to be strategic. At the moment, it's tactical. It helps you personally be efficient. If I want to start driving things strategic across the entire organization, I need to have really great and highly governed data that I can trust as a source of truth. And that's where you want to make sure that they're tight. So that's where kind of we've looked at that governance structure as well. But yeah, I generally think, the speed of change is your greatest disruptor at the moment. It's the greatest risk and thing to be aware, and that keeps you up at night. AI is the greatest asset, but at the same time, you need to make sure it's governed really well. And I also think the change management piece, don't underestimate that with AI. A lot of people roll out Copilot and said, oh, no one used it. We rolled it out, it's failed, no one used it. It's like, well, did you train people in how to use AI properly? Did you actually spend time running AI lunch and learn sessions? Do you have AI coaching sessions? Do you have how-to guides on the internet? Do you have an LLM, in prompt library that everything's got to look up stuff and find? Oh, that's a great one. I'll use that. Most people haven't done any of that stuff, so they go, oh, we roll out Copilot, we pay a bunch of money, doesn't do anything, it's a waste of money. It's just we're not seeing the value. And I think it goes back to again technology tools never add value. As a technologist, the technology enables capability, but ultimately it comes down to people and process. So you have to train the people, get the people on board, and get them confident in using it. They'll identify the great ways to use it, and you give them the process, the structure, and the guardrails of how to use it. And then that's when you start to get maximum value out of it.
100%. 100%. Agree. All of the above, Simon.
Yeah.
Very, very good point. With still on the topic of AI, and again, back to your article, you talk about the strategy and you mentioned a little bit of the strategy and with my background in data analytics and, we know rubbish in, rubbish out. We need to get the data right because the AI tools will be only as good as the data we trained them on. So how do you manage, the shiny object syndrome? Because that's what I keep hearing from tech leaders recently. Having an environment to allow experimentation with new tools and proof of concepts and prototypes while thinking more strategically. What are the use cases that really, really worthwhile investing time and energy to give it a go with AI?
I think
How to balance that?
you hit the nail on the head. I think it's the use cases, right? It's really spending the time to map out those use cases, the strategic use cases that you're going to adopt across the use of AI. Now, different ways to do that. We ran an AI think tank for 2 days. We took a bunch of staff offsite within a facilitated workshop. We spent a bunch of time getting to think about process engineering, process design, and we actually went through and did a deep dive into a whole bunch of processes they felt didn't work well. We then overlaid on top of that, what could we solve with AI? We know AI is quite good at highly repetitive processes with very clean data sources, right? That's its sweet spot. It's not so good in other things yet. So we sort of mapped out then, once you had all the use cases, we came up with over 100 different use cases in AI. We then overlaid that lens to it as well. We actually shortlisted it down to about 10, which are really prime candidates to drive forward. And then we overlaid on top of that then the actual value proposition of what levers these pull across the organization. Does it reduce risk? Does it increase efficiency? Does it reduce costs? Whatever that might be, pick on those measures that you want to have, and then focus on that. And then you can prioritize it again, and we just got down to 3. So now we're running those 3 use cases across the funds. We have those great change champions now from that think tank who are our biggest advocates inside the funds. We've got the executive team who have they went off site for a day and did AI prompt training for a whole day. So now the AI team's the exec team is fully AI aware of what it can do. They're the biggest advocates now as well, driving across their teams. Going back to my hamburger thing before, right? You see it from both sides. And now we're really just driving it across the organization in a very governed and tightly controlled way through our data governance committee, leveraging AI ethics with the right policies in place. We're sort of adopting it that way. So I think you got to link it back to those use cases. If you don't have clear use cases, anything you do in AI is going to fail because you won't be determining the value, and you don't even know, and you can't understand the why. Go back again. What problem are they trying to solve with AI? I remember years and years ago when iPhone were launched, when Apple launched their iPhone, they had the App Store, and that was the biggest thing that came out, right? Because there was no App Store back then, only on Blackberries or any other phones. That was the biggest advocate there. I remember my boss at the time came to me and said, "Simon, we need a mobile app." I said, "Okay, what do we need it for?" He goes, "I don't know. I don't care. I just want a mobile app. Everyone else has a mobile app. We need a mobile app." So we said, "Okay." He goes, "Whatever you need to spend, doesn't matter. Just go from build one." So we went from basically built a mobile app that cloned the website because there was no real direction on the why. No one really used it because the problem it was trying to solve, there was no problem it was actually trying to solve, and there was no clear why. And I think it's the same example, even though technology is different. That's the app in an app store, sure, right? But it's the same with AI. It's the same thing. You can't just go, "I want to have AI and roll it out," and away we go. It's going to solve all our problems. It's actually just another tool. And you go, what problem are you trying to solve with it? And then fine tune those again. What AI is really good at solving, and then fine tune your problems to that. And that's what AI can help you solve.
So true. Thank you. Yes, that actually it reminds me, I'm off the tools for more than 10 years, nearly 10 years now, but in my business intelligence, my background is SAP BW, right? So I remember in some stage, I think I started to get really cynical and skeptic about beautiful, shiny dashboards, right?
Yeah.
And I started really questioning. So, and I really got really deep into KPIs, identifying what are the KPIs that really matter, and because building dashboards and it's easy, drilling down and, so what's behind and why we're building those dashboards is really the key. And I think if we bring that to the equivalent to AI, right, it's there's a correlation there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, another example. I was in a BI reporting migration project years ago, and we had 300 reports or something we had to migrate across, and I was like, well, we're not migrating. Let's go sit down and meet with all the business owners and see what reports they actually want. We got that 300 down to 20, which significantly reduced the cost of the project and the complexity, because all of a sudden all those other reports, no one actually wanted them anymore. They were built at a certain time for a certain thing. Absolutely right. But when you actually we actually went down, what are you actually trying to, hang on, your dashboard is very similar to this person's dashboard. You could probably just use the same one. Oh yeah. And then we eventually consolidate right down and go down to a much smaller number. It's the same thing though. It's understanding the why, and then having that conversation, bringing the human into the loop again, in a good AI principle, and going, hey,
exactly.
Do you actually need that dashboard or not? And solve it from there.
100%. Very good. Yes, technology changes, but comes back to process as well, as you mentioned, right? Do we still need this report? Anyway, we could go on for another 2 hours, Simon, by the sounds of it. But I'm
Yes.
conscious of time. We need to start to wrap up. So if we can go back to human-centric leadership to kind of close the loop, and if I asked you, how and if human-centric leadership in the context of tech, how can adopting a human-centric leadership style can help tech leaders to influence business outcomes or even impact the bottom line? Do you see a connection there? What's the connection, if any?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely, yes. Because it all comes down to communication is the key thing. From the you think about it, right? We're born within what, a couple of seconds we're communicating, right? The baby comes along and it starts crying straight away. Like, it's communicating straight away. It's almost like it's built into our DNA that we have to communicate as people. And that's our greatest asset as a human species, that we can communicate and collaborate and share ideas, right? So I think when you look at that and go back to, if that's our fundamental way we're structured, the way we like to work, you can't work in a world where you're just looking at systems or just looking at process without linking it back to the human-centric leadership side of it. And that goes back to communication. If you've got the right communication in place, the right ability to communicate, empowering people to communicate, it's the most powerful thing you can do. We, for example, in our town hall meetings, we have technology town hall meetings. All tech comes along. I rotate that through different departments. I don't host it. We actually have this department's hosting it this time, and then different people speak and host and run the meeting. So it doesn't matter where you are in the org structure inside tech. Go through the teams. Then they nominate who wants to speak, who wants to showcase, and who wants to talk to things in the agenda. So, the good thing is, we all learn to communicate. I think the other thing, we look at those two great mentoring programs that I'm up, or MentorShe and TechLX. They both have significant components. If you look at the mentoring guides around communication and how to communicate and collaborate. So I think the two key points not to underestimate when it comes to human-centric leadership. The other thing I also think is, and the thing that always stuck with me, is you can probably think of more bosses who you didn't like and didn't get along with in your career, more than the ones you actually liked, right? You probably look back in your career, I've probably got like two I thought were really great, a whole bunch which were probably okay, and then there's probably 4 or 5 which are pretty terrible, right? Everyone might have different numbers, but you think about it, you probably do. You look at the ones that were terrible. Why didn't you like working with those? And generally, it's because they either didn't trust you, micromanaged, talked over, didn't communicate well, talked over you, unrealistic expectations of work, weren't knowledgeable in what had to be done. So what you do? Well, you look at those and go, well, I'll just do the opposite of that. So if I don't like being micromanaged, well, that's fine. I'll give people the deadline and say, go build X, Y, Z, and come to me if you need a hand. Generally, most people will go off and build it by that time. If you want to give people, micromanaging, you tell them, hey, for the next 2 weeks, can you work on this thing? Or next 4 weeks, can you work on that thing, and come back and present, whatever it might be. So you just do the opposite. And I find by doing that, that's your anchor point. Sometimes you find you slip a bit. Like, we're all human, right? Sometimes I'll slip a bit in some of the ways I look back and go reflect on it and go, actually, that probably didn't land too well because I slipped a bit into a style that was the malicious style I don't like, and you have to turn that around, reflect on it, and go, well, no, I'll reset myself and not do that. So I think it's just about how you look at that, and then use those bad bosses as advocates in your mind to be a good boss, right? So and that goes back to being a great human-centric leader.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. I think my last question that usually, the last question I ask to guests is around what your top 3 keys to success, top 3 keys to, I'm getting stuck. The top 3 keys to successfully, mindfully, sustainably lead high-performing teams. So I think we covered a lot already of ground, but to mindfully and sustainably lead high performing teams, because we can lead high performing teams and lead people to burnout, right?
Yep.
But we don't want to do that. So mindfully and sustainably leading high performing tech teams, you already covered a lot of that. But if you have any final words of wisdom, or maybe a quote or a quick story, anything else that you'd like to share with the listeners before we wrap up?
I'll probably call out, you need to put yourself first, which might sound a bit selfish, right? But I think you cannot be a great leader and drive a high performing team without burning them out if you're stressed, if you're burnt out yourself. because they feel that, right? You feel that energy in the room, and that flows down to your team. So you need to make sure that you are putting yourself first. And even if you think, I don't have the time for it, Simon, I'm just so busy. It's like, yeah, but if you take an hour, even half an hour at lunch to go for a walk around the block and get some sun, get some fresh air, come back in, you're gonna feel so much better that afternoon, and your mood will be so much better. Even if you don't realize it, the way you're communicating, analyzing, talking to your team, they'll lift the whole energy of your team, right? So I think it's taking the time to invest in yourself first, even if you feel like you don't have the time, because that will pay dividends for itself otherwise. And I know a lot of people feel guilty investing in themselves, but you got to look at it from the point of view that if you put yourself first, everything else flows from there. Because ultimately, as the saying goes, if you're not happy, how can you make other people happy?
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Simon. It's been an absolute pleasure. Lots and lots of gold nuggets there, so thanks for sharing so openly about your experience, your perspectives. It's been really, really inspiring to hear your stories.
Thank you, Natalie. Appreciate it. All the best. Thanks so much.
Thanks for tuning in and joining our discussion today. If you're learning from this podcast, please subscribe, give us a good rating, and share it with your friends. If you have any questions or suggestions about guests you'd like me to interview here in the Mindful CIO podcast, please share in the comments below. Last but not least, thank you for your interest in the human side of tech leadership. See you in the next episode.